Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I am Ryan Wormeli, joined today by Derek Brown and Pat Fitzmaurice. Fellas, we are talking about realistic rebuilds. We are taking the 10 worst teams in the NFL as we determine them, or rather, as our producer determined them, and we are going to run through some team needs and some players that we think are attainable in the draft where these teams are picking that can address those needs and quickly turn things around. The example I've used is a la the 2023 Texans. Obviously, a large part of that was hitting it big on Stroud, which some of these teams will be hoping to sort of mirror that success. But also, they found Tank Dell, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to see what these teams can do and try and have a similar bounce back here. Just to let everybody know, all of our early 2024 consensus rankings and tiers can be found at fantasypros.com/rankings. And I want to also let everybody know, obviously, this is a very rookie-heavy, conversation we'll be talking about today. It won't always be, fantasy-related. There will be other positions as well. But if you guys are looking for more NFL draft content, we, of course, have the Fantasy Pros Dynasty Football Podcast feed. Debro and Thor have their top 10 wide receiver prospects episode this week. And Fitz, Bogman, and myself are conducting our latest Dynasty Superflex rookie mock later this week as well. So we've got a lot going on that feed. Debro, tell me a little bit about the wide receivers episode.
Oh, man, we ran through the top 10 wide receivers via consensus, kind of compared our ranks, which it's all wide receivers, man. Everybody knows that's one of the strengths of this class. So we have that one that's popping off this week, going through the top 10 guys. Next week, we're going to continue to dive through the wide receivers, talking about the guys we have or per consensus that are ranked 11 through 20, while also giving you some deeper sleepers. So if you got rookie drafts, yeah, you're going to want to tune in.
Fitz, you missed the first edition of the Dynasty Superflex Rookie Mock Draft episode. It was me, Bog, and Cody Carpentier. You will now be able to join this one. Did you learn any lessons from our first time drafting without you and have a plan for this mock?
Yeah, I'm going to have to go back and watch the game film on that to prep myself for this one, but just ran through a pretty good exercise with Debro, Thor, and three of our friends at Player Profiler, doing a mock draft with them, a 6-person mock draft. That was a lot of fun, so people should be on the lookout for that one too.
I'm not allowed to let a show go by with the three of us on together to not mention the Dynasty League we're all in and the fact that Fitz has the number one overall pick, which will be Caleb Williams, courtesy of one Derek Brown. So he needs the practice drafting from the one spot because of our actual real-life league. Let's jump into the news and notes quickly here at the top of the show. Since the last time we had a show on the feed, it's been a couple of days, Justin Fields was traded to the Steelers. I know that was a couple of days ago for us, but since it's our first time, we do want to briefly hit on it. Debro, you have been a big Justin Fields fan. You have been a believer, a truther, however you want to phrase it. What did you make of him going to a team that needs quarterback help, but did also add Russ Wilson this offseason?
I mean, look, we can talk for days about Chicago not getting the compensation we all kind of thought, or and how that's kind of just played out for weeks and weeks, and the market for Justin Fields, or the non-existent market, wherever it is. But, the Steelers, I mean, kudos to them. They have remade their entire quarterback room in one off season with two really low-cost, high-upside type options. And people not look at Fields that way, considering, what he's done so far during his career, and Russell Wilson at this stage of his career. But if they get league average quarterback play out of one or both of those guys, depending on how many starts each one of them would make this season, then, I mean, you got to consider it a win in Pittsburgh, because Mason Rudolph's not the future. Kenny Pickett was not the future either. So both these guys, depending on, you do an early best ball drafts and stuff like that, I'm going to take shots on both of them in early best ball as a QB3 with upside, because we know if Fields is starting, he's going to be running. So if he does get on the field at some point, he still does have that top 12 upside just based off of his legs alone.
Fitz, I know that he's currently slated to be the backup, it seems like, but does this impact at all how you're evaluating other players on the Steelers offense in fantasy?
Not really. Just because we know they're going to get quality quarterbacking, whether it's better quality quarterbacking, I should say, than what they had in 2023. It's funny. A lot of people are kind of bagging on Justin Fields now, like saying he's terrible and like it's such revisionist history. He's going to be a starter again at some point soon. He has the arm talent and the mobility to be a successful starter in the NFL, and he will be again at some point. But he does have to fix the sack thing. That is big. It got to be a huge problem. His sack rate last year was 10.6%. That was the lowest of his career. In 2022, it was almost 15%, 14.7, which is just ridiculous. A lot of younger QBs do have like high sack rates. Josh Allen, when he was a rookie, his was at 8%. Last year, Josh Allen's sack rate was an NFL low 4%. Last year, we saw CJ Stroud and Anthony Richardson right around 7%. And it's probably going to be lower as their careers wear on, but we need Fields to fix that. Like, that is the one flaw that has to be addressed for him to get back in. And if he can take care of that, he'll be a good NFL starter.
I'm mostly just glad that it's done and we don't have to have the ridiculous conversation. Oh, maybe they'll actually trade the number 1 pick for a haul and build around Fields. Like, it was always going to be Caleb Williams with the first pick, and it's nice to just like have that settled, and now we can move forward with that. The other transaction that took place since the last time we recorded that's of any kind of relevance, Alexander Mattison to the Raiders, and probably of less significance than the Fields deal, although, you know, you never know, running back injuries. This is a guy that some people were excited about last year. Obviously, you know, the way he performed maybe didn't quite live up to that. What does this do for Zamir White? Kind of a couple maybe interesting questions here. I know we're talking about kind of a backup running back, but Fitz, what was your initial takeaway to seeing Mattison to the Raiders?
I guess since I don't think that highly of Alexander Mattison, I think this could be a good thing for Zamir White in a way. Alexander Mattison, I hesitate to use the phrase meat shield, but he could be that, potentially keeping the Raiders from spending like a day 2 pick on a running back. I still think they're going to add one at some point in the draft, but this makes me actually feel a little bit better about Zamir White's chances to be the week 1 starter for the Raiders.
D-Bro, quick thoughts on this backfield?
Yeah, I mean, I love this move because just like Fitz said, this is insulation for Zamir White. And, you know, whether they add another back or not, they're not going to put a lot of capital behind it. And we saw what Zamir can do. I mean, in weeks 15 through 18 last year, he averaged 23.3 touches. He was the RB12 in fantasy points per game. And the way that I'll look at Zamir White is he's going to be a volume-dependent RB2 in fantasy. If this offense surprises us, they go out and get a quarterback, maybe in the draft, and they surprise us this year, Zamir White could be a great value.
All right, let's jump into our 10 teams that we're giving their realistic rebuilds here. You'll notice that the Falcons are not included. That's because they've already added Kirk Cousins, and the idea being that he's kind of from the quarterback upgrade alone. They already have a lot else in place in that team. There's still areas to address in the defense and whatnot, but we felt like that was kind of an obvious rebuild that's kind of really already taken place among the bottom 10 teams, so we did not include them. But let's jump in here. Carolina Panthers will start right at the top. Of course, not picking at the top of the draft thanks to their own buffoonery, but they went 2-15 last year. D-Bro, this is one of your teams. What are their team needs here? And no, you cannot just say everything.
Yeah. I mean, it's in play. It's definitely in play. But the top 3 needs for me, I mean, I think, like, again, the conversation starts with the wide receiver position. And I know they've made some moves. I know they have Adam Thielen. I know they have Deontay Johnson. But wide receiver, edge with the trading away of Brian Burns, and the tight end position are the 3 top needs for me.
Now, they don't have the number 1 overall pick like they should have based on their record, but they still have a couple of picks in the second round. Obviously, they did make that trade with Burns. So who are some rookies in the area that Carolina is picking that you think could help fill these needs?
Yeah, I mean, Carolina, look, they don't have their first. It's been well documented and discussed, but they do have 2 early second-round picks at 33rd and 39th overall. I think that if you're looking to address the pass rush specifically, we have to talk about Darius Robinson, edge out of Missouri. I think that he could be a really solid addition to Carolina. Last year, he was 40th in pass rush win rate, 9th. He totaled 9 sacks. So adding him to that defensive line would be a plus, as well as I think this is a perfect range to address the wide receiver position and go with Ladd McConkey, wide receiver out of Georgia. You know, Thor and I talked about Ladd for a while on the NFL Draft Show. So everybody, look, if you want that full breakdown, go listen to that show. But Ladd's got talent. He blew up the combine, so he will not, put it this way, the top 40 to 45 picks will not go off in the NFL draft without his name being said, so I'm going to take him here. And addressing the tight end position, because they're not going to walk into week one with Tommy Tremble, Ian Thomas, Steven Sullivan. I'm today years old when I just found out that Jordan Matthews is actually on this roster. Didn't know that until we did the homework for this episode. But again, going back to this, they need to address the need. I think Jatavian Sanders could fall into the third round. Maybe he doesn't, but after the combine and his testing, and he didn't wow anybody like running a 4.4, 4.5 and stuff, I think he can get there. So the 65th overall pick for Carolina, just let's earmark Sanders and continue to add weapons for Bryce Young this season.
Fitz, I want to quickly get your opinion on the Ladd McConkey selection here by Debro. Kind of seems like a struggling quarterback's best friend. I really have fallen for McConkey in this draft process. I'm a big fan of his. This does seem like the right range. And him plus Deontay Johnson, it's, you're probably no longer the worst wide receiver core in the NFL, right?
Yeah, Ladd McConkey is a guy who excels at getting separation and making himself available to his quarterback. So he is exactly what Bryce Young needs. And I'm a little mad at Debro for taking Darius Robinson, who I really like and wanted to put on a bunch of my teams. So
I think Robinson is going to be really popular, in NFL teams in this range. He's a guy that has seemed to have a really excellent start to the draft process. Fitz, let's go to the Washington Commanders. They went 4-13 last year, and they have a litany of needs.
Yeah, their needs are legion, and luckily they have 5 picks in the first 3 days. So they need a quarterback, obviously. They need an edge rusher after trading away Montez Sweat and Chase Young at the deadline last year. They could use a cornerback, I think. Emmanuel Forbes did not go swimmingly for them as their first-round pick last year. Benjamin St. Juste, not that good. Andy's in the last year of his contract. Could use wide receiver depth and could probably use another offensive tackle.
Before we get to all the other needs, I want to just focus on that second pick and the quarterback. I want you to share who you have them taking and why you have them going with that arm versus one of the others.
So I have them taking Jaden Daniels. And is that the right choice? I don't know. I think Drake May is probably the safer pick. But Daniels is a very promising dual threat quarterback, the best running back in this class, or best running quarterback in this class by far, but also capable of winning from the pockets. It does scare me a little bit that he's kind of tall and thin and takes a few too many kill shots. We don't want to see that. But Washington got one excellent year out of Robert Griffin III way back in 2012 before injuries sort of derailed his career. Jaden Daniels can give this franchise the same sort of electricity that RG3 gave Washington over a decade ago.
I take your point. As somebody who was working in Washington, D.C. sports radio during RG3's rookie season, I'm not sure anybody could match that electricity and how excited the city was. I was on the afternoon drive show, and every day at 3 o'clock, it was RG 3 o'clock. Like, that was all we did. He was the only story for that entire year in that city. But I take your point about, trying to match some of that enthusiasm. Debra, before I let Fitz get to the rest of his, obviously this pick at 102 has been highly discussed about which quarterback they will go with. I know you are a fan of the Jaden Daniels selection here. The betting markets have started to sort of match what you and Thor have been saying for a while. So, what do you think about Daniels being the pick here?
This is a fantastic fit. I mean, putting Daniels in Kingsbury's offense, when we saw Kingsbury and Kyler Murray at the height of their powers, so I think it was 2020 or 2021, Kyler Murray had the 5th highest deep ball rate in the NFL. That is a perfect match for Jaden Daniels, who he led the nation, all collegiate quarterbacks, in basically everything you look at for deep ball passing. So now we're talking about, again, this is a trickle-down effect. Jahan Dotson gets maybe a second life in this type of offense. Terry McLaurin could go screaming through the roof, man. So I'm high on this entire offense. Like, I'm taking shots on them in best ball right now. Love this fit.
All right, Fitz, who are some other rookies further down on the draft board that you think the Commanders could be really trying to target here to, again, fill a whole host of needs?
Yeah, so I'm trying to plug in fits here based on where some of the big boards approximately have these guys and how they line up with Washington's picks. with the 36th pick overall, how about TJ Tampa, a cornerback from Iowa State? As I mentioned, they need help at the corners. They lost Kendall Fuller, Benjamin St. Just, final year of his contract, and Emmanuel Forbes last year was the 112th graded cornerback out of the 127 cornerbacks that PFF graded. So the Commanders have signed a couple of veterans, but not really a lot of juice or star power there. They could use more talent. TJ Tampa, 6'1", athletic and physical. They also need that edge rusher to help replace Montez Sweat and Chase Young. Chris Braswell from Alabama has not played a lot of snaps for the Crimson Tide, but he still managed to get 8 sacks for them last fall. A little raw, but Braswell has explosive quickness and big-time potential. I mentioned the need for some wide receiver depth after they lost Curtis Samuel. I think Jahan Dotson is probably going to be in the slot most of the time, so they could use an outside guy. What about Jalen Polk of Washington? Sort of in the shadow of Rome Odunze, but Polk, 6'2", big outside receiver with really nice ball skills. Like, he is good at getting up and making contested catches. And last, let's go for some offensive line depth with Kieran Amagaji of Yale, an offensive tackle. How can you go wrong with an offensive lineman from the Ivy League? He is a good kid, hardworking, high upside. I think he didn't start playing football until like his sophomore year of high school. A lot of potential here, and he went to Yale. He's got to be a pretty bright guy.
I just realized when you said you're looking for team fits, we should have called this episode "Fits' Fits" and trying to find good fits for every. Although I guess that could also be like a fashion show with
the
fits,
first time he said it, I thought he was talking in the third person. I'm just going to be honest.
I actually did for a half second too. That was where my mind went as well. The thrill and excitement of March Mania is here, and DraftKings Sportsbook, one of America's top-rated sportsbook apps, is giving new customers a shot to turn $5 into $150 instantly in bonus bets with any college basketball bet. Now that the brackets are out, UConn is still the clear betting favorite, despite being in arguably the toughest region in the bracket. A lot of conference tournament winners in that region with them. Personally, I'm a big fan of Tennessee to make the Final Four. I know Fitz agrees with me that we don't see Purdue living up to the hype in that region. I'm not sure if he agrees with me on Tennessee as well. I also have zero clue what to do with the South region this year, so we should be shaping up for some really fun chaos. So however you plan to bet the tournament, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code FANTASYPROS. New customers can bet $5 to get $150 instantly in bonus bets, only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code FANTASYPROS. The crown is yours. Let's go to the New England Patriots. They do have the number 3 overall pick. They went 4-13 last year. Bill Belichick is no longer there. D-Bro, this one's yours.
Man, the needs are pretty obvious here. Quarterback, offensive tackle, and they need wideouts. I know they still have Juju there. I know they still have Pop Douglas, but they've got to infuse some youth on the offensive side of the ball. And I'm just going to take the chalk pick here. They're going to stay at 3. They're going to draft Drake May, a quarterback out of North Carolina, who has a fantastic deep ball, man. So I know people, look, I have May as my QB4. Apparently that's blasphemy, and I hate the kid. I don't hate the kid. My comp for him is the Lions version of Matthew Stafford. And I think he's going to be a very good NFL starter. But looking at the rest of their needs, again, going back to tackle, losing Trent Brown was big, so they got to get a bookend left tackle here. Let's give him Jordan Morgan, offensive tackle out of Arizona. If he drops into the second round, there is some buzz. Maybe he goes in the first round. But, there's a lot of tackles in that same conversation. I think Morgan can make it to them at 34th. And we're looking at a tackle in Morgan. 1 quarterback hit allowed last year, 7th in pass pro grade. So he's going to give Drake May clean pockets to work from. And I'm going to give them one of my favorite guys in this class for wide receiver. Their 68th overall pick in the 3rd round. Let's give him Javon Baker, wide receiver out of UCF. Again, if May is going to get back there, have clean pockets to throw from, and he's going downfield, it's going to be to Javon Baker, baby.
Yeah, Fitz, I just again, because these quarterbacks are so, relevant, I want to get your opinion on the fit with Drake May in New England. I really like May. I mean, he would be QB2 for me. Of course, Debro's done a lot more, in-depth research than I have on that and, watched a lot more film. So I guess I should probably be inclined to trust him over me, but I do really like Drake May. Fitz, what do you make of him going third here?
Yeah, I think well, first of all, I thought the Matthew Stafford comparison was interesting. In terms of arm talent, I buy it, although I think you could cut off one of Drake May's legs and he'd still be faster than Matthew Stafford.
That's fair.
But in a way, he is a better version of Sam Howell. They both produced very early in their careers at North Carolina and then had maybe, disappointing third and final college seasons with the Tar Heels. But I didn't think May's final season was really that disappointing. Like Howell, he lost some key guys from his supporting cast before his last year. I think he's terrific. I mean, I think there's a case to be made that he's maybe the best pure passer in the class. I am totally on board with Drake May at number 3. And considering that in most years Drake May would be like 101, to get him with the third overall pick is quite a coup for the Patriots.
Fitz, you're being nice to the supporting cast of North Carolina. If Tez Walker is your only go-to guy, like that's pretty bad, really bad.
Agreed.
As somebody who is consistently frustrated with how all the good quarterbacks are in the AFC, I'm really hoping this is the team that we're all assuming, and we have a Vikings trade, coming up here on the show. I wish it was this team, and then we can just get all 4 of these top quarterbacks to the NFC, because I'm so tired of every good young quarterback coming to the AFC. Maybe that's just the Ravens fan in me speaking, but I
almost did that, Worm. I almost had kind of played around with the idea of the Patriots, but I saw a report when I was writing on my mock draft, which should be live on Wednesday. Albert Breer came out with a report and said, like, all the top 3 teams at the top of the draft do not want to move back. And the Patriots being included in that was very telling, because they're a team that throughout this entire process, I've thought about, like, they could move back. Like, they got Brissett to sit here and stopgap for 1 year, and this roster overall needs some help.
I'm not entirely surprised. I mean, a quarterback class this strong, when you're picking top 3, like, you should probably just take the guy, especially if it's somebody that you really like. Like, maybe they like May ahead of Daniels, and now they're getting their QB2 or something like that. But it would just be nice to get a little more balance of the quarterback talent, the young guys into the NFC. Fitz, let's go to the team that we did sort of enact a trade here. The Arizona Cardinals, they went 4-13 last year. They currently have the 4th overall pick. Before we jump into the picks that we now are giving them based on a trade, what are their needs?
So they need wide receiver help, obviously losing Marquise Brown. Cornerback is a big problem for them. Offensive line, they've done some good work there, but I think they could still use another player or 2. And then defensive line and edge are needs for them as well.
Now, based on this trade, and this is the team that we kind of have trading with the Vikings, just trying to read the tea leaves here. This is something that Debro put together. Based on that trade, the Cardinals now have 7 picks in the first 2 days of the draft in our scenario here. So you got a lot of names and a lot of opportunities for them to target rookies to fill these needs.
Yeah, we'll fly through this pretty quick, but this is a team that needs work and has a lot of needs. So I can't wait to get the Cardinals up on the hydraulic lift and turn on some music, get out my toolkit, and go to work. This is going to disappoint the Cardinals fans who were excited about getting Marvin Harrison, seeing him as maybe, the best wide receiver they would have had since the great Larry Fitzgerald. But this does give the Cardinals those 7 picks in the first 3 days. And
by the way, quickly, what were the exact picks that we obviously 11 and 23 went to the Cardinals? Were there any others, Debro?
111, 1 and 23. Well, we didn't hash this out. I probably would have extorted a second rounder in 2025 too, but actually, if we look at
keep this 100 too. This per the trade charts and stuff, this is equal. Like 11 and 23 going up to 4 is fair. It's actually per the chart a little bit of an overpay.
Okay,
yeah,
just throw that out there.
All right, so I'm maybe would have had to settle for like a pitcher of beer as a throw in here. So. All right, so let's run through this. At 111, we're going to go for Quinyon Mitchell, the cornerback out of Toledo. Outstanding performances at the Senior Bowl and the Scouting Combine. So he, I think, established himself as the number one cornerback, where there was some maybe vagueness as to who that might be. Maybe some people thought Terrion Arnold of Alabama. So Mitchell has cover skills, ball skills. He's physical. He's athletic. 9.75 relative athletic score. He just killed it at the combine. He's going to help fix a cornerback position that is badly in need of fixing for Arizona. At 123, 23rd overall, the Cardinals' offensive line is actually in pretty good shape for a change. They drafted Paris Johnson in the first round last year. They just signed Jonah Williams to play right tackle. But Jackson Powers Johnson of Oregon could put this unit over the top and make it one of the better offensive lines in the league, which for the Cardinals, who have struggled with the offensive line for so many years, would be quite a nice change. Powers Johnson was just a man among boys in college, a complete mauler. So throw him in the middle of this Cardinals offensive line, and now you're cooking with gas. All right, so no Marvin Harrison for the Cardinals, but let's fix this wide receiver position. Let's start with Adonai Mitchell, A.D. Mitchell of Texas. Not Marvin Harrison, but Mitchell has serious upside. He's 6'2", with 4.34 speed, a size-speed combination that is going to make Kyler Murray's mouth water. With his speed and ball skills, Mitchell is a big-time deep threat. And then at pick number 35, early in the second round, Debro, this is not his favorite guy, but we're going to take Keon Coleman of Florida State. Let's give the Cardinals not one, but two king-sized wide receivers. Coleman is 6'3" and has absolutely freaky ball skills, much like Adonai Mitchell. Coleman played college basketball for Tom Izzo at Michigan State before he transferred to Florida State, and he actually played right away as an underclassman. Coleman is really... He's never going to be an elite separator, but he is in the Des Bryant, Mike Evans category of just phenomenal ball skills. And no, he's never going to be an elite separator, but the ball skills more than make up for it. I mean, he is like a top 5 percentile, like ball skill guy. Just incredible wingspan and great at high pointing the ball. Not slow. Yes, he did run a 4.6 at the combine, but in the gauntlet drill, he hit 20.7 miles per hour, and that was the fastest speed of any wide receiver running the gauntlet drill at the combine. So also looked silky smooth while doing it. I really like Keon Coleman. So at pick 66 in the third round, there is not a play-by-play guy in the National Football League who wants their team to draft this guy. It's Rook Orororo. That's how you pronounce his name, Rook Orororo of Clemson. Clemson's really good at turning out NFL defensive linemen, and here is another. Orororo is powerful and athletic, and I think he's best suited to be a 3-4 defensive end. And this is a defense that could use help at the DE position. With the 71st pick overall, Adiza Isaac, edge rusher from Penn State. Chop Robinson is really the marquee edge rusher out of Penn State, but the Nittany Lions are sending two good ones to the NFL this year. The other is Adiza Isaac, who had 7.5 sacks and 16 tackles for loss last year in Happy Valley. A fiery, athletic outside rusher who could help a pass rush that ranked near the bottom of the league in pressure rates last year. I think they were 31st. And finally, we're going to give the Cardinals another cornerback because that position is just so in such bad shape. Let's fix it once and for all. And we already gave them Quinyon Mitchell, but let's also give them Kyrie Jackson, a big, and I mean big, 6'4", cornerback. We're giving the Cardinals big wideouts. Let's give them big cornerbacks too.
As somebody whose last name constantly gets mispronounced, I'm not even going to attempt the Clemson defensive lineman out of respect for him. Debro, let's move on and give Fitz a chance to catch his breath after that marathon of picks he just had to run through. We're moving to the Chargers. They currently have the 5th pick. They went 5-12 last year. What are their needs?
Look, I think the most pressing needs for this team, when you release Mike Williams and you trade Keenan Allen, obviously it's wide receiver, and I have them in this staying put. They're not trading back. So I think wide receiver is a huge need, as well as offensive tackle, specifically right tackle. And we're going to talk about the running back position. I do not think that they're done adding to that group. And people might say, really? Do they need a running back? Have you met Jim Harbaugh? You think Gus is going to hold up to 700 touches this year? Yeah, they need to add a running back.
Not just have you met Jim Harbaugh, but have you met Greg Roman in that running that offense as well? Now, Debro, just to spoil it, the pick you have at 105 is Malik Neighbors. I realized just now when Fitz alluded to the fact that, obviously the Cardinals can't get Marvin Harrison Jr. if they're not picking at 104, that none of us picked Harrison in this. Now, this isn't a true mock draft, so we don't need to necessarily pick everybody, and we're aiming for who is most realistic. And, the thought is currently, barring a trade, that Harrison would go forth. If Harrison were available, if the top 4 picks are all quarterbacks because of a trade, would you take Harrison at 105 ahead of Neighbors, or would you actually say the fit is better for Neighbors in LA?
I mean, Neighbors is my wide receiver 1. So if we're saying that there's a need and all of these guys are on the clock, I'm taking Neighbors. He's my wide receiver 1 in this class.
Is that a stance you feel very strong about? Like you think it's a very clear number 1, or it's kind of a toss up and you just maybe like Neighbors slightly better?
I like Neighbors. I like Neighbors slightly better. I just think that you look at these top 3 guys, and I mentioned this on our wide receiver show for the draft show, and I said, look, really the top 3 guys, rank them however you want. In the terms of they're all going to the NFL and they're going to be alphas from day one. Rome Odunze, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Malik Neighbors. Neighbors is my favorite guy because I think there's really no holes to his game. I love his route running. He can create yak. He can get deep. He can win short as well. The only small knock, and again, it is a small knock on Marvin Harrison Jr., is he doesn't break tackles, and he's not a yak guy. Now, does that matter if he's open every single route that he runs? No. So I'm not knocking him, but if we're talking about small slivers of difference in these top 3 wide receivers that I think are all amazing, in any other wide receiver class, any one of these 3 guys would be the wide receiver 1 overall, even last year's class. Put all 3 of these guys above JSN, and that's fine. But Neighbors is the guy that I have number 1. So yeah, I have the Chargers taking him at 105. Give Justin Herbert a new alpha to throw the ball to. At 37th overall, they take Kinsley. I'm going to probably butcher his name, unfortunately. Samashia? Unfortunately, I hope I didn't butcher his name, but probably. Offensive tackle out of BYU. Trey Pipkin is not it at right tackle, so they have to address the line. He's had at least an 80.9 pass pro grade in each of the last 2 seasons, and in 2022, he played right tackle exclusively, so he's a fit there. And then in the 3rd round, 69th overall, a very nice pick. Marshawn Lloyd, come on down, baby. My RB1. So the Chargers are walking away with a haul. They got my wide receiver 1 in this class. They got my RB1. And now Jim Harbaugh is not only ready to just run the freaking rock all the time, but when they do drop back to pass, Malik Neighbors is going to take him to the house.
I really like Lloyd, and I love this fit for him. I'm a big fan of that.
He
Fitz,
runs so freaking mean, man. He's a tone-setting running back.
He's great. He's a really great fit here. I know Fitz is a believer in Corum, particularly Jim Harbaugh, going after his Michigan guy, Corum, but I do really like Lloyd. Fitz, I want to get your opinion on Neighbors over Harrison. I imagine you see it differently, or do you agree with that?
Neighbors is great. Odunze is great, but Marvin Harrison Jr. is the best wide receiver in this class. There's no doubt in my mind. As for the run after the catch thing, let's see him work with a quarterback who can actually get him the ball in stride for a change. And I think we'll see more yak out of Marvin Harrison Jr.
Also, Fitz, since you just did so well in the other one, can you pronounce Kingsley's last name a bit better than Debro did?
Please save me, Fitz.
I can't. I have not watched him yet. Kingsley Suamataya.
Oh, that's actually better.
Guess.
That's better than what I said.
Yeah, he's one of those guys where it's like when you mostly consume your content reading, you don't actually hear it said out loud that often. And then it gets time to say it, and it's like, Actually, quickly, Fitz, I will ask just on the running back, like, do you like the fit with Lloyd, or would you rather have put like a Corum here, just given the Michigan connection?
Yeah, I do. I mean, Debro and I argue a lot about Keon Coleman and some of the other guys in this draft, but Debro has actually really won me. Like, he convinced me and has sold me on Marshawn Lloyd, who I moved way up. Like, at the beginning of the process, I had him like in the back end of my top 10, and now I think I've got him like maybe 4th or 5th. So yeah, I like the fit a lot for a team that Debro said it. I mean, this might be one of the run heavier. They're going to rival your Ravens, Worm, as far as run heaviness this year, I would think.
If you need new tires for your car, Discount Tire is your go-to. They have exceptional service, and you get a 30% shorter average wait time when you buy and book online at discounttire.com. They have this really cool feature called Treadwell, which is an online tire buying guide that gives you transparency on tire performance, as well as personalized recommendations based on your location and driving habits. Discount Tire is also the largest independent tire retailer in the country, so it has the biggest selection of tires and wheels. And here's a pro tip from the experts at Discount Tire. You can prevent wear and boost gas mileage by keeping your tires properly inflated. Tire pressure supports the weight of your vehicle and is important to check for safety. So if it's been over a month since you last checked your tire pressure, stop by one of their local stores for a free tire safety and air pressure check. Discount Tire, let's get you taken care of. Let's go to the Titans. 6-11 last season. Fitz, who you got for their needs?
Yeah, so they need an offensive tackle in the worst way. They addressed a big need by signing Calvin Ridley and just driving the Brinks truck up to his house. That was a huge need, but now they can focus on the offensive line, which they really need to do. They could also use a cornerback, and they could probably use an edge rusher too, but they only have 2 picks in the first 2 days of the draft. So, while I was able to take a lot of swings for the Arizona Cardinals, I'm only going to get 2 with the Titans.
And who are those 2?
So after having to pronounce Rook Ororo's name, I'm very excited to pronounce the name of the guy the Titans are going to take with the 7th overall pick, Joe Alt of Notre Dame, offensive tackle, and I think pretty widely regarded as the best tackle in a really loaded offensive tackle class. So Alt is, he was a captain at Notre Dame. He is the son of former NFL offensive lineman John Alt, and Joe Alt actually has a brother in the NHL. So this is an athletic family. He's 6'9", 321 pounds. His build, it's sort of a basketball player's build. He reminds me a little of Joe Thomas, long and athletic and really technically sound. So I think he's like a ready-made left tackle. He is not going to need a lot of development. Just plug him in, and this offensive line so badly in need of improvement, it's going to improve when they draft Joe Alt. And for the other pick for the Titans, 38th pick overall, Ennis Rakestraw Jr., cornerback from Missouri. Missouri's actually got 2 really good cornerbacks. I think we're going to have the other one going a little bit later in this draft. Titans, they need cornerback help. Rakestraw is tough, ultra competitive, doesn't have burner speed. He actually has torn his ACL, and he can get a little handsy at times. I know that drives some of my Missouri fan friends crazy, but he is a borderline first rounder who would be a nice get in the 2nd round for the Titans. Ennis Rakestraw Jr.
If Joe Alt is available at 7, I mean, the Titans are going to sprint to the podium to take him. It's just such an obvious, and I think he will be, unless he goes to the Chargers at 5. I think he will be there at 7. And it's just the easiest, team fit, need, great player. It's just super obvious.
Go ahead. When we're doing our mock drafts, that is one of the easiest names you can fill in.
You put that in right away and then figure out the rest. Whenever I read his name, you mentioned how much easier it is to say. I had a camp counselor when I was younger whose name was Joe Lab, and he would introduce himself as Joe Lab, 6 letters, because it was just nice and easy. And I want Joe Alt to do the same thing. Joe Alt, 6 letters. It's just not nice and easy. Yeah, couldn't have been an easier name to pronounce. Let's go to the Giants here. 6-11 last season. They're actually picking 1 ahead of the Titans. They had the same record. Debra, what are your needs for the Giants?
Well, again, we had to stop the fall here because I don't want anybody to say that I hate the player. Marvin Harrison Jr., I think, is going to go at 106. But so we're going to fill the need for wide receiver. But the other spots that we have to fill needs for here is offensive guard and cornerback for the Giants, because these are glaring needs for this team.
Well, Debra, if you go to Marvin Harrison, you're pivoting off your original pick of Odunze, who now is not getting drafted in our discussion here. So I mean, I feel like all three of these guys are going to go top 10, right?
Yeah, all three of these guys are going to go top 10. It just depends on, this could just simply be as much as, pick your flavor. Like, who do you like out of this class? Again, talked about all these top 3 wide receivers as like, look, they're all really stinking good. And so, I don't think Marvin Harrison Jr. goes as the wide receiver 3 off the board. I think he's probably one of the top 2 guys. So, going to stop the fall here. But
yeah,
getting back to needs to fill for the Giants, again, guard is a big pressing need for them. Now, they did already sign John Runyon, but the other side of the line, they still needed a guard on that side. So let's give them Cooper Beebe, guard out of Kansas State. And moving further down the board, in the 3rd round, 70th overall, they need a cornerback that can start opposite Deonte Banks. McLeod did that last year. He was not good. Let's give them Chris Abrams-Drain, cornerback out of Missouri. Last year, he allowed a 47% catch rate, a 54.7 passer rating and coverage. Really good corner that's, honestly, I'm kind of surprised if he'll be there, but I think it's possible in the 3rd round.
If you guys are anything like me, you have had plenty of terrible experiences buying tickets. I've been to so many games over the years where the ticket buying experience was so bad, I almost just didn't bother going to the game. Hidden fees that raise prices by obscene amounts, not to mention when you can't even tell if you can trust the seller or how good the views are from the seats. And of course, there are never any available deals to make it a little bit more affordable. Thankfully, Game Time is here to solve those problems. You shouldn't have to worry when buying tickets. And with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of the ticket buying process. I was on the app earlier this morning. It really stood out just how easy it is to navigate. The ticket buying experience is smooth. It's immediately clear which tickets are the cheapest and where exactly those seats are. And at the top of the screen, you can see flash deals to make sure you're getting the best price possible. Game Time is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. See the view from your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. All-in prices show your total up front so you know you're getting a great deal before you check out. And it's so simple. You can buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code FantasyPros for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code FANTASYPROS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Fitz, let's go to the other New York team. The Jets went 7-10 last season. What do you have for their needs?
Well, the Jets defense is pretty terrific, so the needs are really all on the offensive side of the ball. First and foremost, they just need pass catching help because they've got no one really after Garrett Wilson. They need wide receiver, and they could use a tight end too. And although they have been doing some work on the offensive line in free agency, they could probably use another lineman or two, and I'm sure they're going to draft a couple at some point in this year's draft.
Who do you have them trying to target here with their limited picks?
All right, so with the 10th overall pick, with the big 3 at wide receiver of Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, and Rome Odunze gone, let's give them the best tight end in this class and the best tight end prospect to come out of the college ranks in years, Brock Bowers. And he is going to be a dynamic weapon for Aaron Rodgers, just a phenomenal pass catcher. He is an absolute weapon. I think our guy Thor Nystrom was talking about how he doesn't even really consider Brock Bowers a tight end. He just considers him an offensive weapon. Because he's not that big, but man, he is just so good at the catch point and so good after the catch. I have no doubt he's going to be productive in the passing game right away for whichever team gets him. And then the Jets don't have their 2nd-round pick. They gave that up to the Packers in the Aaron Rodgers deal. So with the 72nd pick overall in the 3rd round, the Jets are going to take Devontae Walker of North Carolina. Debro just mentioned, not one of his favorite players, but Tez is interesting in that he is a size speed prospect whose ball skills are actually pretty good. So there is some raw material to work with here. He's definitely not a fully formed guy. I don't know if he's going to be a prolific producer right away as a rookie, but Tez does have NFL size and speed, and I think he could be developed into a productive NFL receiver.
Aaron Rodgers might feel like he's right back in Green Bay. I mean, you just gave him MVS for the Jets, right? I mean,
it's not the worst comp, actually.
Should feel right at home. I mean, to be honest.
D-Bry, I want to get your opinion from a fantasy perspective on Bowers to the Jets. I've made this comparison on the Dynasty feed. I don't think I've made it on our main feed here, but Daniel Jeremiah, the year that Kyle Pitts came out, said, don't look at him at a tight end. If he was a wide receiver, he'd be the number one in this class. Now, that hasn't borne out, but that was kind of the way he evaluated him as a prospect, as this guy's a pass catcher, and he's a stud at that. It doesn't matter that it says TE next to his name instead of WR. Is that how you view Bowers as well?
That's exactly how I view Bowers, and I think that the best way that I've heard it phrased, Thor's put it really well about looking at him as a weapon, but also shout out to Brett Coleman, friend of the show. He recently described Bowers as he's just a really souped up H-back, and that's exactly how I see Bowers. Like, he's not truly a tight end. You're not going to ask him to do all the blocking and sticking his hand in the dirt and stuff like every single snap and plowing the road. So really looking at him, he is a weapon. He is an H-back. He is a really, really good version of that. And I think he's going to be a stud as soon as he gets to the NFL. He's a matchup nightmare.
Fitz, if let's say Odunze gets there to the Jets, would you have taken him over Bowers?
I think I would have, yes.
Yeah,
because I think the Jets, like, if they need to get by with, Tyler Conklin and Jeremy Ruckerts and that crew again, they could do it for another year. And, like, there's this misconception, I think, that, like, Aaron Rodgers doesn't like throwing to his tight ends. No one's going to ignore Brock Bowers if he's in their offense. Like, there's
Absolutely.
no worry about that.
Yeah. All right, let's get to the Vikings, 7-10. Obviously, they're not picking in the top 10 currently. We have that changing here. D-Bro, what do you got?
Well, they made the big trade to move up to 104, giving up the 11th overall and the 23rd overall pick. They're going to go up for quarterback. We know what's going to happen. J.J. McCarthy, welcome to Minnesota. So that addresses the quarterback need, just to get that out of the way. But the other big needs for Minnesota is the running back position. Yes, they do need a running back. I know they have Aaron Jones, but 1-year deal, and Ty Chandler is not it. So they do need to address the running back room and cornerback. Byron Murphy was passable at best, and everybody else around him did not play good. So they need a rusher and they need a corner.
Now, I don't want to just quickly. I know that there's been a lot of discussion on other shows about McCarthy and his fit with the Vikings. I don't want to quickly blow past it here because this is like a very exciting move for you and Thor specifically, who have been on the JJ McCarthy train for a while. Thor, of course, is a Vikings guy. So tell me a little bit about what you make of this fit and why you're so excited about McCarthy to Minnesota.
He could play in structure. He could play out of structure. He could use his legs. I mean, you're talking about one of the few, if not the only passer in this class, especially at the top, to come out of a real NFL offense, and you can project him to the NFL where there's not like all these puff easy yards to gain per screens and things like that. He goes through progressions, and he's top 12 in numerous efficiency metrics. So I think the entirety of this process, people have used lazy narratives to sit here and knock JJ McCarthy down. I'm sick and tired of hearing it. And then whenever they've dug their graves with bad takes on JJ McCarthy, they continue to hold the shovel and dig it even deeper, trying to reach the Earth's core, because they don't want to sit here and come to grips with the fact that, oh, guess what? People were out there saying that he's going to be a top 8, top 10 pick. And now he is going to do that. But some of us have been there the entire time, so we don't have to go back and try to delete all of our bad takes off of X.
Fitz, I'm not sure what your previous takes have been on McCarthy and if you're being lumped in here in the D-Bros, bad take crowd, but what do you make of the fit here and not only of the fit with Minnesota, but of the Vikings actually trading up to get him?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very likely outcome, and I would worry about the status of Thor Nystrom if the Vikings don't wind up getting JJ McCarthy in this draft. We're gonna have to do a wellness check on him if they don't. So I don't know if I always saw it, just because JJ McCarthy only had to throw 23, 24 passes a game at Michigan. You had this team with a great running game and a great defense. There wasn't much for a quarterback to do. He was the Maytag repairman, going back to that famous ad campaign, sitting around idly playing checkers all day. But yeah, I agree. He's my quarterback 4. I think he deserves to be that in this class. I know Debro has him a little higher than that, but I buy it. I think he's a worthy first-round pick.
All right, Debro, and who else do you have for the Vikings?
I mean, look, addressing running back position, they're going to be able to do that. And I think this player probably goes a little bit higher than this. But with as much flack as this running back class has gotten throughout the entire process about, it's not a good class, not a good class. Although I have a 3rd-round grade on Jalen Wright, running back out of Tennessee, I could see him fall to the 4th round. And if that happens, the Vikings are going to run to the podium with the 108th overall pick. And this is really, the Vikings love guys with speed. They love playmakers. Aaron Jones, Ty Chandler, Kenny Nwangwu. And although he's being used as a kick returner, the archetype is there. So Jalen Wright makes a ton of sense, as well as addressing cornerback with the 129th overall pick, Kalen Carson, cornerback out of Wake Forest. Brian Flores, we know the 2 things he loves to do, and that's blitz and play man coverage. Last year, they did not have the cornerbacks in that room to play a ton of man coverage. Weeks 1 through 4, Minnesota was 13th in man coverage rate, but the rest of the entirety of the season, so after week 5, they had the 6th highest zone rate. Carson is a guy that he can man up. He can get physical with wide receivers on the outside. In 2022, he was the 22nd highest man coverage graded cornerback, allowing a 40% catch rate in man coverage. So I think Minnesota would love both of these additions to the depth chart.
Fitz, quick thoughts from a fantasy perspective on Wright in Minnesota?
Yeah, I like him a lot. People are going to make the Alvin Kamara comparisons because he's coming out of Tennessee. I don't know if he's quite that as a pass catcher, but in a similar vein, fast and very skilled all around. I think he's going to be a really good fit for the NFL. His game is going to translate nicely.
All right, Fitz, let's stick with you for the Chicago Bears. Last team we're talking about today, 7-10. Of course, they have the number 1 overall pick, courtesy of that trade from a year ago. What are their team needs?
Oh, let's see. It's quarterback, offensive line, defensive line, and maybe edge to help out Montez Sweat. And it's interesting, you're putting a Green Bay Packers fan in charge of fixing the Chicago Bears. I feel a little bit like the gremlin out on the airplane wing in that famous episode of The Twilight Zone. So, no, I will do my level best to try to improve
you
the
mean
Chicago
you're not going to be giving the Bears Spencer Rattler with the 101?
Tempting as that may be. No, I'm going to give them Caleb Williams, which seems like an inevitability now after the Justin Fields trade. Caleb is just so good at making plays out of structure. I think he's going to fit really well in the NFL. He's got a little Patrick Mahomes in him in that regard. Good arm, quick release, doesn't really commit turnovers at a high rate. And the special sauce with Caleb is definitely his escapability. He is hard to sack. So that's going to be quite a change after 3 years of Justin Fields for the Bears, a guy whose sack rate is definitely not going to be at 10% this year. I think it's the right guy for the Bears. I know Debro has him as his QB9 in this class, but Caleb, for me, is the QB1, and I think he has a chance to become the best quarterback the Bears have ever had in franchise history.
Coming from a Packers fan.
So they also have the 9th pick, and they're going to take Olu Fashanu, an offensive tackle from Penn State, 6'6", 312 pounds with a 9.58 relative athletic score. Great kid who was a team captain at Penn State. Needs some technique refinement, but just has a world of upside. And Braxton Jones has been pretty good for the Bears. I think he has outkicked expectations as a 5th round pick in 2022, but you can put Jones somewhere else on this line. Fashanu is the type of player who can anchor an offensive line and be their left tackle for the next decade. And finally, in the 3rd round, let's give the Bears an edge rusher to help out Montez Sweat. Jonah Ellis of Utah, high motor edge guy whose older brother Caden is a linebacker for the Falcons. Jonah Ellis kind of reminds me a little of Nick Herbig of the Steelers, who came out of the University of Wisconsin, was a favorite of mine in college, a little undersized, but absolutely relentless and productive, and Jonah Ellis is in that same vein.
Fitz, I know that they just traded for Keenan Allen, but at 109, again, if Dunze is there, do you think the Bears would take him? And, obviously Allen's getting older, and plus you can never have too many good weapons.
Yeah, that would be tempting. And I would be fascinated to see what the Bears did if they were presented with that dilemma, because you could give Caleb Williams, and look, they have already endeavored to give him this great collection of pass catchers with DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Cole Kmet, who's a really good tight end, Gerald Everett, a second tight end. Adding Odunze to that mix would be awesome, but it almost goes back to the dilemma the Bengals had a few years ago where it was between Penei Sewell and Jamar Chase. Kind of a similar dilemma here for the Bears. I remember I actually thought the Bengals should have taken Sewell. I was dead wrong on that. And I do kind of think I'd like to see them get one more piece in that offensive line. They've started the rebuild. They've done a decent job of bolstering that offensive line, but it's still average at best. Get your franchise quarterback a franchise left tackle.
Debra, what do you think about that pick at 109? Would you also go Olu Fashanu over Odunze if he's there?
So my mock, depending on when people are listening to this episode, my mock actually, I have them taking Odunze at 109. And the way that I'll look at it is just take what is already good and make it elite. Make it where Chicago, you're going to have to put up, to beat them, that we know the defense is good. And no shade against Fitz going with the offensive line, because yes, I think that's the one part that people are kind of missing with the Bears too. It's we're adding linebackers, we're adding safeties, we're adding, defensive ends and stuff like that. We're trading for Keenan Allen. This offensive line hasn't gotten any love. They're still rocking basically the same exact offensive line that they had last year. And we can pile it all on Fields and say all the sacks. The other thing we can also easily say is that, like Fitz said, this line is average at best. Now, why I go with Rome is just because, again, taking something good and making it elite and taking this offense to another level. But also, if you look at just the structure of this depth chart, Keenan Allen's a free agent in 2025. And if you look at DJ Moore, he can be an unrestricted free agent the year after that. So giving Caleb an alpha wide receiver that can get eased in year one behind these two other studs, and he can maybe step up and be the leading guy next year, the year after that, I think is another masterstroke by Chicago. But either way they go, they're both needs. And so really it's kind of how do you go wrong here if you're Chicago?
Quickly, given the situation he's getting dropped into and how highly thought of he is as a prospect, in redraft, where do you think you'll be ranking Caleb Williams among quarterbacks in fantasy next year, Debra?
I think he's a mid QB2. I would love to rank him higher, but the thing that I kind of come back for, and CJ Stroud he crushed this last year, because I as high as I was on Stroud, he was my QB1 through the entirety of the process. The thing that you come back to fantasy-wise is he didn't run. So you're going to have to get into the top 10, top 12 quarterbacks, you have to either surprise by passing touchdowns, which we saw Jordan Love do, CJ Stroud do, or you have to get volume, which, maybe Chicago is going to come out the door and have a top 5, top 10 passing rate, and that's how Caleb gets there. But right in most iterations, a medium projection, I think, is looking at him as a mid QB2 with QB1 upside.
Fitz, what do you think? Same question.
High-end quarterback 2. I've got him right behind Justin Herbert right now, and I think there's a case that he should go ahead of Herbert just because of how conservative that Chargers offense is likely to be. Caleb's not going to give you a lot of rushing value, but he's going to give you some, and he's got some really good pass catchers there. I think he has QB1 upside.
We will get out of there on that. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and sticking with us for a long episode. Hopefully, we have managed to successfully rebuild some of these teams here with our drafting efforts. For Fitz and Debra, I am Ryan Wormeli. Thank you, everybody, again, and we'll see you next time.